Well, week one was just crazy. We had some crazy games, some games that were not even close, and some games that were really close. Some games that came down to the wire. And wait, did we have a tie in week one? This is Sports Hour. Yeah, some crazy things happened week one. There was some. Yes. First off, we had the first game of the season, which was actually occurred on a Friday. They changed that schedule. They changed 2 games this week for our schedule. And we'll go ahead and go to that. Go ahead and close that down, please. Yeah, so in week one, the first game of the season happened on a Friday, which doesn't normally happen. They normally have games Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and that'll be what it'll be for the rest of the season. But because it was the first game of the season, they decided to go ahead and let's have it on Monday, on Friday instead. And that was just something that doesn't ever happen. And being the first game of the season, you might say that you would think that the teams would be prepared and everything else. Well, the final score in that game was the Dogs getting crushed by the Dolphins. Yeah, they got crushed in that game, 95-34. I don't even know how you get beaten that badly. It's like this. Now, granted, I believe, remember correctly, if we look at their roster for them, Dolphins had a much better advantage in this case. They decided to sit Neil Itson in the end of their game. Decide we're going to put them on the milk, and then they had a pretty decent average. They had a 900 basically, 902. So basically a 990 rating versus the Dogs, who didn't have a terrible rating. They sat some of their people too, and no one got injured in this game. But there was a big problem with what they had. They couldn't. The defense was so powerful that they just couldn't do anything. So the Dogs lost. I can't. Don't I have the sheet up already? They did not put the sheet up, did they? Okay, well, I don't know where it is. But anyways, they put that there, and they did decently over the Nuggets. I mean, obviously, it was supposed to be a really close game, and it was a 6-point rate. It was 6 points in favor of the Dolphins. Well, the 6 points in Dolphins might have been thrown out the window because the Dolphins crushed the Dogs. In fact, as far as I could tell, the Dolphins manager said that the Dogs just didn't put up a fight, and that was something that they couldn't do anything. They just couldn't do anything. And granted, it was the first season of the season, so they don't have everything put together at this point in time. But they have one thing that they do need to figure out: can they get a team? Dogs will play the Jets next week, another tough team. Panthers defeated the Werewolves, and granted, it looked like it should have been a whole lot closer game than it was. It was not even close, to be honest. In the concept of the Dogs got Panthers when it jumped out to a 30-point lead in the first quarter. And they never really let up at that point. But in the third quarter of that game, they scored. Both teams scored 60 points, which has never happened in the NBL history. And it's one of those things that you're like, 60 points. I mean, some teams don't even get 60 points in a single game, as we'll see in some of these little things later. But there was they scored 60. The Panthers scored 63 points in that quarter, and the Werewolves scored 61 in that time, and that really took a hit. Now, the Panthers did win that game in the end, but not because they scored 60 points in the third quarter. The Werewolves had a little bit of trouble looking at their roster for that. Werewolves didn't have much of a chance, honestly, even though they did play all of their defensive backs in that game, just trying to figure out who was going to play and win. They didn't play Dorothy Vaughn because she was not supposed to be sit out. Now, there was one thing about the Panthers. The Panthers decided to play three of the rookies last season, and guess what? This week they're playing three of their other rookies. So they're going to have in the first 2 weeks, 6 weeks, and they actually play something pretty easy next week. We'll talk about that when we get into it in a little bit. It's probably going to be in episode 4 or 5. I can't remember which one this one is. The Lions win against UNC. Not much to say about that game. It was pretty much protected in such a way that it was a pretty much close game for most of the game. The Lions jumped out in the end, and they actually ended up winning that game. We had the Supermen. They beat the Hawks, which is a shocker, to be honest, because the Hawks were expected to win that game. The Hawks were, Hawks were supposed to, I predicted the Hawks to win. They lost. The Supermen beat them. And they were supposed to, by the way, win by about 7. It was spread for, I was spreading them about 2 points. So I thought it was going to be a much closer game. It ended up being about a 14-point game, so it wasn't that good. But they did win that game, which does mean the Supermen probably are going to have a much better season than we originally predicted. Looking at the looking at the Superman, the prediction. I gotta find which one it is because I don't know what everyone's division. I should, but I don't. Superman's division. They actually predicted to be 15-3, but this is one of those games that I kind of expected them to actually lose at the end of the season. I had them predicted. I had them predicted to lose this game and then win the next 3 games. Then lose against the Chargers. And so on. I think we can get that one up. Can we get that one up, please? Yeah, so I had them predicted to. I had them predicted to lose this game in the context, which I don't know why I had 15-4 because they obviously don't have 15-4 game. But I did have them losing this game. But then I kind of had them predicted some other things as well. It's a little tough for that game. Cardinals double up on the Falcons, and they scored almost 100. It was 48. 40. No. The Falcons only scored 48, which is huge for a team to only score 48 in week 1. If you are in week 1, you probably need to be getting somewhere around 80 points. They only scored 48, which does not show very good for them the rest of the season, because they have the third easiest schedule. Third easiest of all the teams in the NBC. Or the West. I had the AFC and the NBC. American Basketball Conference and the American Football Conference. Why did I do that? National Football Conference. You know what I mean. It was supposed to be National Basketball Conference and the National Basketball American Basketball Conference. But that's the basic thing for those things. Those teams just did not. Now, granted, I did actually predict that the Cardinals were going to, have a tough time in this game. I didn't predict that they were going to crush the Falcons, and that's something it is. The Ethan crushed. They shocked the Ravens with their defense. The defense only allowed 51 points, which is honestly very bad. Their offense didn't do great in this game this week because of the context they didn't actually get a lot of points. I mean, 70 points is not terrible for week 1, but it's not great. But their defense did bring big 4 hits. As for the Lightning ended up shocking the Dragons in the context because they won that game. The Dragons were predicted to be the number 1 seed. Was it number 1 seed? Number 1, number 2 seed in the NBL, which would not get another bye if they were the number 2, but 1 did. But they lost this week. They lost badly. In this week. I mean, granted, we know that the Lightning have a decent defense. But the Dragons should have wiped the cord of this. I thought it was going to be a close game, and it was not a close game. The Dragons actually scored the 70 points that they... Sorry, what was it? The Dragons scored all of the 51 points in the third quarter, up to the third quarter. They did not score any points in the fourth, with the exception of one penalty point. They scored 1 point in the entire fourth quarter. How you do that, I don't have a clue. And that's the sort of thing you got against. Dragons, I predicted them to have a really good season, but with this shown, I don't even know if I can do that anymore, because they just did not show anything that they were expected to in that game. That was one that they should have easily won, because the Lightning only have some decent play. They only have to do a defense. They don't even have a good defense. Granted, their defense is better than their offense, but their defense is not good, granted, to anyone else. Pirates, unfortunately, we had some problems with the Pirates. Pirates lost their start in the first quarter after running into the pole. Oh, he had having a broken nose. He probably will not play next week. At that point, they lost him. Granted, they didn't do terribly off of that, but Browns did win that game in the end, partly because they did lose a star, and he will be out for at least probably this next week. Something that doesn't normally ever happen is the ties, and ties don't generally happen, although the Saints did it 6 times last year, which is probably the reason they ended up being the second round, not the first round, because they had ties, and then those ties count as half win and half a loss. But the Indians and Colts had a tie in week 1, 98-98. How does that really work? I don't know. Granted, I did expect this to be a very close game, but the Colts and Indians did play. They both battled it out. In the end of the quarter, there was a possibility that the Indians would have won, but the problem was there was a penalty on the play. The last chance, having too many men in the field. And that meant that the Colts got a free shot, because according to the rules of the NBL, if a penalty happens on the last play of the game, then they get a free shot. They get at least one free shot, maybe 2, depending on how many penalties have happened. Indians had 98 points. The Colts had 97. Oh, sorry, back it up. That was it. They had 87 points, the Colts did, and the Indians had 90 points. But because of high penalties the Indians had committed during that point, they got 3 free shots, which is ridiculous. But it does. That's how it works. And the Indians got a tie at the end of that. So they ended up winning the overtime. Overtime nothing much happened with overtime. They scored back and forth, and due to the rules of overtime, they're tied at the end of that period. It's a much shorter period, 6 minutes, because we have to go to the next game if they're watching it. There was a tie. It was 98-98. By the rules, there's no second overtime anymore. There used to be back in 2014? 2015. In 2015, there was 2 overtimes, and then there was a tie after that point. The problem was that made a lot of the games not work as well, and they had to actually to wait to start the game because there's only 2 courts they can actually go to on this. There's the Bank of America Stadium court, which is and then there's the YMC court, which was the other court, and they can only start a game after the overtime period is gone. So they changed the rules off of that. But with the Pirates, we had the Chargers beat the Bulldogs. And it's surprising because they did beat them. Chargers. I predicted the Bulldogs to win that game because of their skill offense and good defense. They don't have a terrible defense, but they did lose that game. The defense did show up for the Cardinals, for the Chargers in that game, came them down to 100 points. Of course, granted, it was still a 21-point game in the end. That was because there was a penalty at the end of that game, which allowed the Colts to go for an additional 1 point, which didn't do much of the game, but it still worked out that way. Then we had the Giants. And a shocker. The Giants beat the Jets in Week 1. It was a close game. It was supposed to be, like a 20-point. I picked it to get like a 13-point difference. It was a 4-point difference in the end, and that actually ended up being a weird thing because the Giants did win that game by 4. And there was no penalties or anything like that in it. That game only had 2 penalties in the entire game, and that was too many in the field and unsportsmanlike conduct. Did not matter to the game in the end. Both the point shots that were made in that time were missed. And so there was a little bit of it was a pretty big thing for the Giants to win that game, which hopefully means the Giants will do a whole lot better in the future for that. For the Giants have not done well in the last 4 seasons, which we have back to go into. Their best record was an 8-10 record. They have not qualified for the playoffs. In a long time, they have not qualified for it. Their next best record was 5-13. That was last season. So they did have but if the Giants can beat a Jets have a really strong team. They might be contenders for playoffs. Now, I have changed my things up for this coming episode for that, and for Sports Hour episode. And that is pretty big for that portion. One other big thing happened. The Otters, yes. Otters did, in fact, win against the Bobcats. Bobcats weren't able to handle the Otters' offensive stand, and the defensive stand kept them to going to very low amount of points. They only got 77, which is basically average for a Week 1 game. But unfortunately, the Otters did win that game, which I predicted correctly in that one. And for anyone who has not then put their thing onto the ads, you go back to episode 1, you link down the comments for that one, and you can predict your team. You can pick each, and you can pick each week still, even if you don't do it. You just put under this video or the current week for that. And if you want to do your own team, go back to episode 1, which there will be a link to that after this video is over. And you can go back to that and you can predict your team. They're open all season up to the point where the playoffs occur. Just know that the later you do it, the more the harder it's going to be for you to win the game, win the entire thing. Because only first place gets the entire thing, exception if it's me. I don't count. And then finally, the Tigers scored the final shot to win against the Angels. It was 1-8. It was 115 to 116. The Angels were going to win on the last shot. The Tigers did throw it up for a three-pointer and won the game off of that. Not much. That was a back-and-forth game all game. And that's honestly how I predicted. I think it was going to be a 2-point game. Now, granted, I thought it was going to be a 2-point game in favor of the Tigers, and that's what I think. So I got it right in this case. It was a -5 race. We actually predicted the Angels were going to win. I predicted differently. But anyways, next week is going to be a much more. But it's going to be some of these. There's going to be some of these going to be a lot tougher, and some going to be. All right, so some big problems here with the Pirates. Pirates have lost Samuel Ince for at least one game. He's got to go back and get his nose fixed. He ran to the basketball pole during the game in the first quarter. It was not wet or anything. It was not raining. He ran to it and he broke his nose. So he will not be playing. Nothing else is really that interesting during that. I mean, there might be some players that get started, and we're going to go to the Thursday video, which is going to, then I'll get more onto that, about who starts, who's starting, who's not starting, and the things about that. I will be doing my predictions with this video, but I'll get talking more about that. Stephen Rogers is still out. He will be out for a few more weeks, unfortunately. So he will not be playing during that time period. And it's kind of sad to have that, but yeah, it has to be that way. Panthers are starting. Paul Vanner will be out for this week as well. But the Lions didn't need him in his first game for this season. So for the first game of the season, when they did beat the UNC, UNC is not particularly the toughest team, but not really the best team either. And the Panthers are going to be still going to be out on home for this week, but she'll be back starting next week, according to the Nets. Oh yeah, and they did not mark this right, guys. You gotta fix this next time. But they are starting. Hey guys, you're good. You guys are good. But they are starting some of the players that played last season. And the big thing is going to be that they will have some good players during that game. And they got Raven Knobb, who's 99 overall player. Elzer Thomas Jr., while didn't actually show up much in this game, he will be showing up a lot in the next game for that one. All right, so we're going to get into it. Not much else really happened with the teams during this week. But now we're going to go ahead and get into who won, who lost, and what are the biggest portion. But I don't need to show that. That is not in week 1. Let me see if I can get the... Let me try to get that up. on who lost in week 1. I mean, now granted, also we'll go with team picks and all that. My team's still in it. I actually did not get a lot of points this season. This week I got 3 points, and the problem was some of these Panthers played the Werewolves, so I mean I couldn't win both those games. And the Packers did win. The Chargers did win. But that wasn't a lot. I didn't get a lot of points. If you guys want to get into this, this would be a big portion. This would be a big thing time to go in and do that. I got 9 of the games in week 1 correct, and I lost 7 of the games. You can still win with this. For this, for every point you get 1 point for every win you get. And losses don't count against you, to be honest. That will be on there, assuming you win all 9 games or whatever that in 1 week. Then it'll get protected correctly. There you will predict 16 games in order to do that. And if you pick some of the games you don't pick, that's fine. You just won't have a chance of getting high enough points. My team only got 3 points this week, probably because, as I said, the problem is by doing that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 players that are on Panthers. I can only get 1 point for those. I have 1 point for each of the other things, I believe. But that's the sort of thing that happens for that. But if you guys want to get into this, go click on the episode 1, and you can do team minutes. Any week, you can go back and predict the teams for who you think is going to win each one of the weeks for minutes. And this is week 2. There's 2 videos this week, so you can put it into this video or you can do the next video. I'm going to do my predictions in this video, and we'll talk more about moves that people make in the Thursday's video. All right, so week 2 is coming up our way, and we have some big games. The game of the week is going to be starting off very quickly. I got this one up here. And the game of the week is UNC and the Giants. I'm going to color that in green. Note that game will happen at the same time it would normally happen, but that is week 1. They've changed a few of the games. For example, the Knights will play at 12, which will be early on. They've changed, there will be 5 games. There's going to be 6 games on Saturday, I believe. Is that right? 6 games on Saturday? And all the games that are staying on going to happen on Saturday will happen on Saturday. You won't be able to tell that in the video until I talk about it on Sunday's video or on Monday's video. Today's Monday, so it's going to be that. Then they got Giants and UNC, I think, are the best matched up. At the end, it's be Giants won by surprising, and UNC didn't do terribly. Looking at UNC, only scored 98 points still, and that's still pretty good. This is not a divisional matchup or anything like that, so it's not going to be a big thing. But the Giants did win week 1, and they scored 99 points, so it's not a terrible. Both these teams scored pretty decently for week 1. I think that's going to be the interesting game. Prediction for the rating for the first game in the season is going to be the Knights versus the Techs. Next. Now, Knights, they won week 1. And to be honest, Knights, winning in week 1 is not a big thing, especially since the Knights did to kind of surprise everybody about who won that one. I mean, I predicted that the Eagles were going to win that game. They didn't win. That was not a very high-scoring game, so I don't have much to say about that one. But because of who they beat, that basically means a lot for this week. The Techs are not, huge in their overall defense. They have a much higher defensive rating, though. And the Techs did lose in this week. But it's not going to be a very they played against one of the tougher teams, and that's a big thing. I have to predict. The prediction for me in the score-wise is it's going to be a 5-point game. That's my prediction for that. I am actually going to predict that the Techs win this game. Because even though the Knights have a much variance, the Techs have a very strong defense, and the Knights don't have a very strong anything. Their offense is what's going to have to save them for that. I predict the Knights are going to win that. Techs are going to win. I'm going to say that the prediction is that the Techs will win by 5. Dogs and Jets play. I have to say this is going to be a very. I think the Jets are going to blow up the Dogs, and I think that's going to be huge. The Jets lost week 1. So did the Dogs. Now, the Jets got kind of surprised, to be honest. There wasn't much to say about that in the context. It is a 15 points in favor of the Jets. I'm going to agree totally with that. I'm going to go with 12 points prediction. I predict the Jets will win that game. Now, if the Dogs somehow come back and win this game, by more than 12 points, and in all, I would be surprised in the context. I think the Jets are going to win that game. Where will some Falcons play? Where will some Falcons play at 1:30? And the problem with this game, for me, is the Falcons and Werewolves are fairly evenly matched. Werewolves have a slightly stronger team overall, but Werewolves played the Panthers in week 1. Not much to say about that. The Panthers did win that game. They did lose week 1, but that's not a big deal. They got 107 points still. Falcons, guess what they scored? 48. And they allowed 94. With that, I have to predict the Werewolves are going to win that game, and I think it's going to be a pretty big game. I'm going to go with a 12-point prediction in favor of the Werewolves. Lions and Athens play week 1. Now, Athens won week 1, and that's a pretty big thing for Athens to win week 1. I still have it predicted 8th. But Athens and Lions do have a tough game ahead of them in this week. I have the Lions. In this case, Lions scored 120 versus the 98 that was allowed. So they're not the best team. But the Athens scored only 70 in their game, and they allowed 51. I have to predict, in this case, the Lions will win that game. And I'm going to predict a wild thing for this one. I'm picking 21-point advantage for the Lions. I think the Lions will win that game by a lot. Bulldogs and Packers, both teams are pretty evenly matched in this week. I mean, just looking at the week-to-week basis, the Bulldogs did lose week 1. However, the team they lost to only beat them by 21 points, and actually both of them still scored pretty high amounts. So with the 100-point portion for that, that's a pretty big amount for them to, yes. Now the Packers, the problem with the Packers played a week really weak team, to be honest. And the Packers did not score as many points as I thought they should have in their win. Let me see. Packers lost. Sorry, Packers actually lost that week. And they scored only 74 points. I don't see the Packers winning this game. I don't know how and if they lost that game. Did they lost that game? Yeah. Bulldogs lost, Packers lost. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs winning this game. Mostly because I don't think the Packers will have enough to deal with the Bulldogs' defense and offense combined. I'm going to say it's going to be a very close game, though I think I'm going to go for 7 points. 16 points in advantage of the Bulldogs winning this game. That's what's predicted. Tigers and Colts. I was not particularly impressed with how the Tigers won that game, to be honest. It's not surprising for Tigers and Angels. Angels are not a team that generally, wins at the end of the game. They win generally in the middle of the game, like early fourth quarter. And that's a team that's going to be a struggle, I think, in this. They beat the Angels, just not particularly impressive. They allowed 116 points, which, the Angels have a pretty strong offense. And they have a decent defense, which defense obviously did not show up in that game, especially since the Tigers do not have a defense, which means that's surprising that they. Granted, they both have a really good offense. This is a tough game for me. I'm honestly surprised that one did not get picked for the game of the week. I have to predict, in the context of the way that Colts game, I'm predicting that the Tigers win this game, but I'm going to predict that it's a 1-point game. I think it's going to come to the very end, and if it does come down to the end, I think the Colts are going to lose that game. If it is, decided early on, it's going to be a yes. Finally, we have the Indians and Panthers. Indians having a tie in week 1. I don't even have to really say much of this. I'm predicting the Panthers in week 1 in this week because there's no particular way the Indians win if they can score 98 points. Panthers will crush me in. I'm going to go with a 10-point difference. It's a 21-point difference prediction for the Panthers to win this game, and I'm predicting 10-point difference. I think it will be a much closer game than it's actually predicted, but that's going to be it. Giants and UNC, the game of the week. Giants winning in week 1, UNC losing against the Lions. I have to say this is a tough one for me. That's the big portion. It's a 4-point prediction, 4-point prediction spread, and to be honest, I want to see the Giants just do it again, beat UNC. And to be honest, I don't think this is going to be very close. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I'm going to go with a 1-point prediction. I'm picking the Giants to win this game, although I think it's going to be a very close game, and then I think it's all right. Angels play the Pirates. Angels' defense did not really show up for this game, even though they have a very high defense. Pirates lost their hits, and that's the reason I'm going to predict the Angels to win this game, because of the fact that the Pirates lost one of their players, and that he probably won't play this week. Now, if that does happen, if he does happen to somehow come back in during this game, I totally predict the Pirates to win this game. But yes, I'm going to go with the same thing. I think it's a 4-point game. We have the Browns and Otters. I don't even know how to say about this game because the Browns and the Otters both looked pretty good in this week. Browns and Otters both won. Browns scored 87 allowing 58, while the Otters scored 105, allowing 77, and that is this is a tough game for me. And looking at the Otters team, I think they're going to have a little bit stronger defense in the context. I don't even know how to say this. I mean, the Browns, here's the problem with the Browns. I don't think the Browns are going to hold up. I think the Otters are going to win this game, and I think it's going to be a blowout for this one. It says negative 17 points in favor of the Nets. I'm going to go with 28 points difference. I think the Otters are going to win this game by a lot. Dolphins and the Lightning. Lightning shocked the Dragons. And to be honest, not much to say about that with the Dolphins winning that game against them. Lightning beat the Dragons. They have to face the Dolphins this week. And that is going to be a very tough game for the Dolphins. Now, I have the Dolphins winning this game, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to predict the Dolphins to win this game, but because of the fact that the Lightning did defeat the best team in the league basically right now, I'm going to predict the Lightning to win this game. However, I think it's going to be too close to call. I'm going to go with 2 points in favor of the Lightning. Now the Ravens and Saints. This is going to be a sad game for them. Now, if the Saints do what they did last year, tying and having a little bit of problem at the end of this, I don't see the Saints winning this game. But that's because the Saints have a much stronger defense than the Ravens. I gotta find where the Ravens are here. Ravens have it's actually going to be a very interesting game. I'm going to predict the Saints winning this game because the Ravens did not put up a fight against the Ethan, and the Ethan did not have doesn't have a strong team. That's going to be I predict the Saints. I think it's going to be a very close game in the end. I'm going to go 5 points to my prediction. Now, granted, predictions don't mean anything, but that's just my prediction for those. Bobcats and Superman. The Superman is shocking. Dang. Let's see. Who the Superman shot? The Superman shocked the Hawks. Probably the third or fourth best team against the Bobcats. And Bobcats lost in week 1. I have to predict, in this case, that the Superman would win if they were playing at home. Problem is the Bobcats have never lost more than one game back-to-back. In fact, if you look back at the predictions they've won plenty of games in a row. They have not lost a game back-to-back. And looking at the Bobcats, gotta find where the Bobcats are because it's not as easy as it looks. Bobcats. And the only season where they had lost a back-to-back game, actually they didn't even lose that game. The only game that they ever really got close to even losing was the game they tied 2 seasons ago, and they have done really well in it. I don't think the Bobcats have what it takes to actually lose back-to-back weeks. I'm going to go with the Bobcats winning this game, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to go with a 2-point game as wins. That's my prediction. Bobcats win this game by just a point or 2. Cardinals and Westville. Cardinals were impressive against the Falcons, but Falcons are not particularly a great team, especially if they don't have a really good defense. Westville doesn't have a team whatsoever, so I'm going to predict the Cardinals do win this game. However, I do not think it's a 4-point game. I'm predicting a 12-point game for the Cardinals to win that game, considering how they did against the Falcons. West Philly is actually, if anything, a worse team than the Falcons. So I'm going to go with the Falcons. Okay. The Cardinals winning this game. We have the Hawks, the Bengals. Now the Hawks, I got some problems with the Hawks. And the problem is that the Hawks lost against the Supermen. Bengals are a decent team. And with the Bengals, I had them predicting to lose this game originally. The Bengals, I would predict them to actually win this game. But I do think it's going to be a 2-point game. It's 2 points in favor of the Bengals. I do think it's going to be much games. Then we have another pretty big game, Chargers and the Dragons. Now, originally, I would probably pick the Chargers to lose this game in any case, but there's a problem. The Dragons did lose against the Superman. Is that right? Nope, sorry. The Dragons did lose week 1. And they didn't lose any more. They lost against the Lightning. And Lightning is honestly not that great of a team. Their defense showed up in that game, and that was the only thing it is. Dragons should potentially win this game. I am going to predict the Dragons winning this game, but I don't think it's going to be 28 points. I think they win by 1. 1 point. And that is going to be a big portion towards this game. I don't even know how to say this. This week, I think it's going to be a very big hit. Now, I agree, this is a much longer episode than I normally would have done, but the problem is, the preview week will be a much shorter. It'll be 30 minutes. It'll probably be like 30 minutes instead. But that's basically it for this week. During the Thursday episode prior to all the Thursday episode prior to it, I'll go into any changes that might have happened. If there's no video for that, there's no reason. Prediction. There will be, I will say, the next week's episode for Sports Hour will be uploaded a little late. It'll be uploaded probably on Wednesday because of the fact that the NBA will actually be closed on that day. There's no particular reason why it is done on that day, but it will be, so that will be uploaded on Wednesday evening or Wednesday or Thursday. And there will be only one episode during that week. So there will only be one episode on Thursday. If you guys have not put your predictions in for this week or any of the weeks yet, you can put that down below. I didn't do particularly well. I got 9 and 7, so not great for my predictions. If you guys think you can do better for predictions, go ahead and put that down in the comments below this video. And if you have not put your team together, you can go on. You still can do that. You can do that up to week 14. That's been changed around a lot. It's week 14. That's because that would be when teams start clinching the playoffs, and then you'd be like, what's the point of having that? That is what's going to happen for that. Thank you guys for watching this. And I will see you guys in the next Sports Hour episode, which will be on Thursday. And then next week, there will be only one. It will be on Thursday as well. Thank you guys for watching Sports Hour, and I will see you guys in the next week.